They thought the dog was becoming a problem. He was becoming the only solution they had. The toddler hit the floor on a Thursday morning. Not a fall, just the sudden sitting down that 16-month-olds do when their legs stop cooperating with their plans. Ordinary, harmless. But before Priya Marchetti could cross the kitchen, the dog was already there. Not to help. That's what she thought at the time. To loom. Atlas was a Leonberger mix, 3 years old, somewhere between 110 and 115 pounds, depending on the week and whether he had gotten into the bag of sweet potatoes Priya kept near the back door. He had lived with them since he was 8 weeks old, before the baby, before the sleep deprivation, before Priya began measuring her days in nursing sessions and nap windows. He had always been calm. She had described him to family as almost boring. The kind of dog that made guests expect danger and delivered nothing but a slow wag and a tendency to fall asleep on their feet. Then Soren turned 16 months and Atlas changed. It was subtle at first. He started positioning himself between Soren and the room's exits when the boy cried, not blocking, just present. Present in a way that felt intentional and a little too focused. Priya noticed it the way you notice something in the corner of your eye. Not worth stopping for, but worth filing. The second time, she stopped for it. Soren was in his high chair and had dropped a cracker. A small cry, the kind that builds if ignored. Atlas moved from the doorway to the high chair in 4 steps, rose on his rear legs, and pushed his nose towards Soren's face. Slow, deliberate. Inhaling, Priya's husband, Stefan, pulled the dog back by the collar. He didn't push, didn't growl, didn't resist. He just turned, sat, and watched the boy. Stefan said it that night. He's fixating. Priya was a pediatric home health nurse. 9 years. She had assessed infant environments, filed incident reports, sat across from families who had dismissed warning signs until it was too late. She knew what large breed dog fixation looked like near small children. She had read the literature. She had the framework. She had never been more wrong about anything in her professional life. The behavior continued. Every time Soren cried, from hunger, from frustration, from the specific fury of a toy that wouldn't do what he expected, Atlas appeared. Always his nose. Always toward Soren's face. Always that slow searching inhale that lasted 2, 3, sometimes 5 seconds before he would pull back and look at them directly. Waiting for something. They called his behavior escalating. They were not wrong about the pattern. They were entirely wrong about its meaning. By the second week, Stefan's sister had suggested rehoming. She'd said it gently, at dinner, and Priya had nodded because she had been thinking it herself, and hearing someone else say it made it feel like consensus rather than panic. The kennel reservation was for the following Monday. If you have ever made a decision that felt like the only responsible option, and then lived through the night that proved it wasn't, you already know the shape of what came next. Subscribe now. This channel is for exactly these stories. Friday night. Soren went to sleep at 7:40. Priya was folding laundry in the bedroom. Stefan was in the kitchen. Atlas was in the living room, lying near Soren's door, doing what they had started calling the vigil. Priya had stopped commenting on it. 3 days until Monday. At 11:58, she heard Atlas make a sound she had never heard from him in 3 years of living together. Not a bark. A sustained, low vocalization. Not quite a whine, not quite a growl. Something in between that had weight to it, that she felt before she understood it. She walked to the hallway. Atlas was standing at Soren's door, not scratching, pressing the full side of his head against it. She opened the door. Soren was in his crib. He looked fine. He looked asleep. She walked in because something that wasn't language told her to. She touched his forehead. Warm. Normal. She touched his hand. Cool. She picked him up, and the limpness was slightly more than sleep. Not alarming, just slightly more. And then she turned on the light and looked at his lips. She called 911 before she reached Stefan. Soren's blood glucose registered at 36 milligrams per deciliter in the ambulance. The normal floor for a toddler is 70. At 36, the brain begins operating on reserves. Permanent neurological damage does not arrive with a warning. It arrives as silence that looks like sleep. Dr. Fenella Okafor, pediatric endocrinologist at the Regional Children's Hospital, sat across from them at 2 o'clock in the morning and explained what had been building in Soren's body for weeks. Congenital hyperinsulinism. His pancreas was producing insulin beyond what his glucose intake could balance. The crying they had observed, the specific cries that brought Atlas running, were hypoglycemic distress, his body signaling what it could not say. She looked at Priya. She said, "Something woke you up." Priya said, "The dog." Dr. Okafor nodded slowly. She said, "Another 12 minutes, and we would be talking about permanent damage instead of management. Has your dog ever done something you couldn't explain until it was the only thing that made sense? Tell us in the comments. These stories deserve to be heard. The crying Priya had documented as escalating was Atlas alerting every single time. The nose pressed toward Soren's face was scent detection, the compound isoprene, released on the breath of a child in glucose crisis, detectable by a dog at concentrations thousands of times below what any monitor in that house was calibrated to measure. He had been reading a number no machine in that house could see. They had been reading aggression. He had no way to show them the difference. The kennel reservation was canceled Monday morning. Priya called and said they wouldn't be needing it. Soren came home Wednesday with a continuous glucose monitor clipped to his upper arm, a small oval device that sends an alert to both their phones when his levels shift. Most nights, it does its job. Every night, Atlas lies at the foot of the crib anyway, chin on the floorboards, still watching, because the numbers can change, and he has been paying attention since before anyone knew there was something to pay attention to. Every guardian deserves to be recognized, even the ones who never asked for anything in return. If stories like this matter to you, subscribe so you never miss the next one. The next story involves a dog who began refusing to let a mother leave the house, and what the emergency room found 40 minutes later.